Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I'm your host, Emily Hayden, and today's episode is going to broaden your perspective on what it means to live a fulfilling life. It's really easy in this fast-paced society to get so tunnel vision and focused on one goal that other areas of your life start to suffer. But what if you didn't have to sacrifice one thing for the other? What if you could have a thriving business and a successful marriage, all while being the fittest version of yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually? And if it sounds too good to be true, it's actually not. Today, we've brought the expert in this area on today's show. His name is Craig Ballantyne. He's a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, speaker, and empire builder. He has built not one, two, or three, but five seven-figure businesses in five different industries, written 3 books, mentored thousands of entrepreneurs all over the world, and he's a firm believer that you can scale a 7-figure business without being a workaholic, burning out, or missing out on the most important moments in your family's life. He's been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, The Wall Street Journal, GQ, just to name a few. So today we're going to discuss how to build your business around your life, not your life around your business, which just so happens to be the foundation of his new book, The Perfect Week Formula. So without further ado, Craig Ballantyne, welcome to today's show. I'm truly so honored to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Emily. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I think so too. So I was personally incredibly impacted by your second book, which was The Perfect Day Formula, so much so that my podcast listeners know that I've actually done a few episodes sharing some of your strategies and telling them all to go get the book yesterday and implement it into their life.
Cool.
Yeah, it was just really impactful. So when I found out that you had the perfect week formula, I was really excited to dive in today. One of the most impactful things that I think I've recognized in my life is the ability to actually see how other people live their lives, because I find that either it will show you exactly what you don't want, or it broadens your perspective to say, I never thought about doing it like that. So where I want to start today's show is, could you share with us what a day in your life looks like? What is your daily routine?
Absolutely. So I don't use an alarm, but I get up anywhere from about 3:45 to 4:30. So today, our daughter, she's 9 months old, and she was sleeping through the night, and now she's kind of getting back up in the middle of the night. So she got up around 3:45, which is actually perfect timing because that's the time of day I like to get up. So I'm as daddy, I'm on middle of the night feeding duties. So my wife puts her to bed and then does the kind of crying and screaming to
Mm-hmm.
put her to sleep every night. And then if she wakes up, I mean, we go to bed really early. So we go to bed like baby goes to bed at 6:30, 7 o'clock. We go to bed about 8 o'clock. And sometimes the baby wakes up at 9:30. That's not the
Oh
fun ones.
gosh.
But yeah, but last night was great. So she woke up at about 3:45. I went in there, I gave her a couple ounces, and she fell right back to sleep again. And then I went down and I started work. So the general schedule is 4 till 6 is my alone time. I think, I write, I go through contracts. I was going through an investment contract the other day, stuff that's really hard. I do the hardest thing first. And as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, it's easier for me to do the harder things first than it is for me to do a hard thing at this time of day, which is 3 o'clock. There's no way I could read that contract at this time of day. So then after that, 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock in the morning is family time. So hopefully you can't hear in the background, but my dog is drinking a bowl of water. But during the from 6, so it sounds really weird, but 6 a.m. till 8 a.m., baby gets up, we feed her. So she's eating solid foods now. So we have a lot of fun doing that. And then 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, our family goes for a walk. We live in Cancun, Mexico. And so we live
Oh,
in this area. Yeah, we live in this gated community near the airport. You fly over me when you're coming into Cancun. So whenever anybody's coming down for vacation, just
give a
wave
little
out the
wave.
window. Yeah, you'll see me just outside of the jungle. And we go for a walk. Dog goes for a swim. We get back about 8 o'clock in the morning, and then I go into my second work block, which is usually from about 8 until 11. And you'll find that my day is just really broken up. It's like work block, then break up, block, then break up. And so it looks like it's a long day, but it's actually about 8 hours of work. And so from 8 till 11, I really focus on revenue generating activities, on cranking out some copy, some sales letters, helping other people on my team with their sales approaches, maybe some role play sales calls or whatever. And then 11 o'clock, I go work out. At 12 o'clock, I have lunch. And then at 1 o'clock until 4 o'clock, usually, I have another work block. And that's where I do all of this outward facing type stuff, calls, whether it's with a coaching client or whether it's with, a podcast like this.
Mm-hmm.
After this, I'm going to catch up with another CEO and just, see how he's doing and, see what's working in his business. And so that generally gets me to about 4 o'clock. And then from 4 until 8, it's back to family time. So that's kind of like my little rotation. And I'm a big believer in time blocks. So I'd rather have a single 3-hour work block per week on a project than 3 1-hour work blocks on a project. Because if you do the 3 by 1 hour or 6 by 30 minute, you die a death of 1,000 cuts through transition time. Now, I would just add one more thing there, Emily, is that once upon a time, I was a broke, struggling personal trainer who could only work in sometimes 10-minute blocks. I mean, I wrote articles for Men's Health magazine while standing in a cramped subway car on an old BlackBerry for a long time because that's the only time I could do it.
Wow.
And there's a really famous female short story author named Alice Munro who actually won the Pulitzer Prize for literature. And she wrote most of her best-selling books when she was a single mother of 3 who worked in the bookstore below her apartment. And she worked in what she called the slivers of time, which was when the kids were off to school before she had to go to work. So there's time when you kind of have to muscle through and work in the slivers of time. But when you get to the point where you control your own time as much as you can, you need to work in big blocks of time because that's where you'll have your huge breakthroughs.
I remember reading your book that time and energy management combined was a new concept at that point for me. Whereas before in college, we did some time management courses, but it was quite literally just manage your time and put something in each time block. Whereas what I learned from you was like really assessing when do I have the best energy for different tasks. So like you were mentioning, you wouldn't be able to look through that contract at 3 p.m. So I think that self-awareness is really important, just to be very aware of like when you have your best ability to work on certain things.
Like a little visual that's really helpful for everybody is, whether you've had kids or not, you've seen the toy where there's a square hole and the child is supposed to take square block and put in square hole.
Mm-hmm.
And what most people do in their lives is they take a round peg and try and jam it in a square hole all day long in terms of their energy management. So they are doing that hard thing at 2 o'clock. And maybe they just had a work meeting and, we all know we shouldn't eat a lot of simple carbs at lunchtime, but maybe they did have some simple carbs at lunchtime. They're falling asleep in their chair at 2 o'clock and they're supposed to be reading that contract that, oh gosh darn, they really should have read first thing in the morning, but distraction, social media, email got them down the rabbit hole first thing in the morning. So they burnt that time. And now they're trying to, to jam the square peg in the round hole at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so what you need to do is identify the time of day when you have the greatest energy, focus, creativity, and discipline, and do the hardest thing at that time. For most people, it naturally is earlier in the day, because as the day goes on, you get a whole bunch of emails, you get all your coworkers or team members or whoever is involved in your life bringing to you their emergencies. The kids get sick, you got to run there, this, that, and the other thing. And the next thing you know, trying to do something in the afternoon becomes impossible. And so take that most difficult task that requires your greatest energy, intensity, and focus and put it in the time of day when you have the greatest discipline, willpower, and intention, which again is often early in the day. And when you match those things up, that's when you can get more done in less time.
What about for those people that say, I'm just not a morning person, I can't wake up early?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so now that I live in Cancun, I want to learn how to speak Spanish. And I've been doing it on my own for about a year. And today I had my first lesson with a tutor. And he actually, we were trying to talk about this, and I was trying to explain to him that yo escribí un libro sobre
Tiempo?
rutina de la mañana. So it's like talking about the morning routine. He goes, oh yeah, my girlfriend's like that. And he was speaking in English at this point. He goes, my girlfriend, she gets up and she goes right to it. But for me, it takes me like 20 minutes to even acknowledge like my body is alive. And we were talking about that. And listen, I totally understand people that are like that. And I also I want people to understand that my principles, my foundational principles, are not it's not important about exact hour that you get up.
Mm.
It's about what you do with the hours that you are up. And so I had a very good friend of mine who built $100 million business working between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. And sometimes I'd work at his house. And so when I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, that was his signal to go to bed.
Oh my
But
gosh.
he used the same principles
Mm-hmm.
that at 10 o'clock at night, he attacked the hardest thing. And so it doesn't matter what time you get up. It doesn't matter if it does take you an hour for your brain, because that's just your body, right? It's your
Mm-hmm.
body. It's your body, mind body connection, that it takes you longer than people like me, who I could be at work in 7 minutes. Like from the moment I get up, I
Right.
can just crank stuff out. Don't worry about me. Instead, again, go back to where is your greatest intensity of mental intensity, energy, focus, creativity, and make that time your time. Do not allow other people into it. Do not allow other activities into it. Do not
Mm-hmm.
waste it on the distractions. When you know that, it's usually about 90 minutes to 2 hours, and you can get like 8 hours, quote unquote, 8 hours of productivity in that 2 hours, if you compared to if you tried to do it at another time of day. So those people that wake up slow, listen, it might be 2 hours after you get up, but that's when you got to attack it. So self-reflection and introspection is absolutely critical for
Mm-hmm.
this time management and energy stuff. And then I know what other people are thinking. Well, I'm on somebody else's schedule. Maybe maybe they're high up in a company, or maybe they're kind of doing a side hustle and they got to work all day long. You may not get it every day. And so if you can get it, if you can rearrange a meeting schedule, or,
Mm-hmm.
if it has to be Saturday only, that's the only day you get for right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was a personal trainer who trained, I'm a morning person, and I was a personal trainer when I was younger, and it was 6 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. And you know what? Okay, great. Well, actually, it was 5 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then on Saturday from 8 till 11 a.m. And then Sunday, no. And so it's like, okay, the only 2 days I get my magic time is what I
Mm-hmm.
call that time of day is on Saturday and Sunday. And that's what I'm going to do until I make enough money that I'm able to sacrifice guaranteed income for future income by not taking clients on Thursday morning at 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the evolution that I did to kind of take back control of my time.
I think what I'm hearing is kind of assess where you're at and seek to optimize wherever you're at in your journey. So even if it's one day of magic time, know that you want to get to doing that every day, which is the beauty of, when you're creating your own life and business, you can actually create your life and business to be congruent together versus them always opposing each other. So you spoke a little bit on how important it is that when you identify this magic time to not allow anything to come into that. So that's kind of where I want to go next is the idea of creating boundaries and non-negotiables. And how does this create more freedom in somebody's life? Because I think a lot of people hear boundaries and they think constriction, but in reality, they are to give freedom. So what are your thoughts on creating boundaries, non-negotiables, and how does that create freedom in one's life?
Yeah, so I'll use a bit of a personal example that is not necessarily work related, and then you can kind of dig deeper into the maybe a work related side of it. But
Mm-hmm.
so if you go back in time to when I was a single guy and I had really nothing on my calendar, so I had this wide open calendar, there was no boundaries on it. And if anybody here is a single entrepreneur and who does kind of control their own time, online entrepreneur, you can look at your calendar and you can fill it with work. Like
Mm-hmm.
when there's no boundaries and there's a vacuum, it's like, okay, it's Tuesday, none of my friends are doing anything interesting, it's 5 o'clock, I've really got all my work done for the day, but I'm gonna have dinner in maybe an hour or two, I guess I can work another couple hours. So there's no boundary there,
Mm-hmm.
and that actually puts you into a bit of a prison. And that I wrote a book about how I had this really bad anxiety attack when I was younger, because I was working all the time with no boundaries on my work. And when I put boundaries on my work, it then made me more effective. So I said, I'm done work by 5 o'clock every single day. I didn't need to work more hours. I just didn't have any boundaries on it. And I ended up overworking myself, getting burnt out, having the anxiety attacks. So now what I do in my life is when I walk through that plan before, there was hard boundary at 6, hard boundary at 8, hard boundary at 11, hard boundary at 1 or 2. Usually it's 1 o'clock to 4, and then hard boundary from 4 to 8. and hard boundary for the bedtime too. And those boundaries, those hard boundaries, it sounds like, oh, there's no spontaneity in that. Well, there is a ton of spontaneity within each of the family time free boundaries. And because I have those boundaries and it forces me to be very productive, I actually work way less, make more money, and have all weekend off to be spontaneous with my family.
Mm.
So that's the power of boundaries compared to the power of, this free, I can do anything whenever I want, wherever I want. It ends up being a paradox, this paradox of freedom that puts you in this prison of you might tend to overwork or that sort of thing. Or it's the same with exercise. If you said, listen, I've only got 3 hours per week and I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to get in great shape. Well, that's in many cases better than if like I got 6 hours, so I'm gonna do all this training. I'm gonna end up with these overuse injuries, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do a lot of training that's not even very effective because eventually you get to the point where there's a law of diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it is when it comes down to your boundaries. And I've always believed, even before I had a child myself, that when an entrepreneur had their first kid, it either goes one of two directions. One, they just become so chaotic and they blame everything and they make excuses, right? Or they just go, oh, I finally realized what's really important. And now I want to have more time with my child. So I'm going to put hard boundaries in. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
cut all this stuff that doesn't, make any meaningful improvement. And it's the boundaries that help you identify what really matters so that you can choose the right activities and get the same or more results in less time.
Wow, that's impactful. And I love that you bring up your experience of when you were a single guy. I was actually having a conversation with a friend who's a single guy, very successful, has a great job. And he was just sharing how he works 24/7. And he
Yeah.
eventually would like to be married, eventually would like children. But he's like, well, I have nothing else to do, so I might as well work. What is maybe like a mindset shift that you could give him? Yeah, like what would be his reason for not choosing to work at night when he's technically at home alone?
Right. So something has to go on the calendar, right? Because if we don't have something on the calendar, it is this vacuum. And, it could be somebody who's listening to this, I just fill that vacuum with Netflix, or I fill that vacuum with television, or I fill that vacuum scrolling Instagram. We've all
Mm-hmm.
filled a vacuum with Instagram before.
100%.
And, I mean, somebody said, no, I can't wait till they invent a time machine. They have invented a time machine and it's Instagram, only it's not a very good,
Oh my
helpful time
gosh,
machine.
it's true.
So, we go to our friend and we say,
Mm-hmm.
listen, it, if you state this is what you want, what you need to do is align your actions and your goals.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, is you have to put your butt where your heart needs it to be. And so you have to schedule, because you could work from, Monday, Tuesday, you got all these meetings and stuff. You can work till 9 o'clock in the office, whatever. That's not going to get you ahead in life. And it's actually, you're going to blink and you're going to be 37 years old. And this is a very unfair fact about life is you can be in, like, I didn't get married till I was 44, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so most women can't get married at 44 and have babies, but I was able to do it. So it's not fair. I'm just saying, but even
Mm-hmm.
to your friend, he doesn't want to blink and, next thing you know, he's 37, 38, 39, 40 and hasn't gone anywhere with his goals. So he needs to put stuff on the calendar because those will act as real boundaries. And it could be like he's going to join Ultimate Frisbee, or he's going
Mm-hmm.
to go and he's going to join this thing. He's going to join this other thing. He's going to do blind dates, whatever he's going to do. He's
Mm-hmm.
got to put that stuff on the calendar because that then creates the boundary. And the whole Perfect Week book that you have read
Mm-hmm.
came out of this experience that I had with a very successful entrepreneur, a guy named Bedros Keuilian,
Mm-hmm.
who I've known the guy for 12 years now, and we ran a coaching program together. And I lived in Toronto, and he lived in California, and I'd fly down there to California, and we'd do these 2 days of coaching that would end on a Wednesday, and it didn't matter. Wednesday, 5 o'clock, I've flown all the way down from Canada. We've had 2 great days of work. You think like, okay, the boys are going to go out and have dinner. He's like, okay, buddy, you're on your own. It's date night tonight. Every Wednesday, 5 o'clock, it's date night. This is a guy who had 60 employees. He has a fitness franchise with 500 franchisees throughout North America. Busy as heck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a non-negotiable 5 p.m. date night. It's on the calendar. Now, if you know that, what do you think his Wednesday looks like? Do you think it involves a lot of scrolling on Instagram? Do you think it'll, no, it doesn't involve any of that wasted time, because he's forced to be focused so that at 5 o'clock at night, he can go home, get ready, pick up his wife, and they can go out and have an important evening. And that is the same mentality that your single friend needs to take. And the person out there who's like, oh man, I really wish I could, work out more, but I work a lot. And, no, you just got to put the workouts on the calendar as non-negotiables, as, same as like when you put a dentist visit on your calendar, you work around it, you make time for that thing. And if I was to leave everybody just with, if they learn nothing else from this podcast, is to take the phrase, I'm trying to find time to blank, and change the word find to, well, not change the word trying to I'm going to, and find to make. Because you don't find time for anything. It's not hidden under the bed with the ab rocker you bought 20 years ago.
Right.
You only make time. You make time for what matters. And if you're finding that you're not finding time, like if you look at yourself and you, man, for the last 3 years, I said I was going to try and find time to learn Spanish or do this, that. It's just not that important to you, and you should just let it go.
That's a good point.
Because if something's important to you, you're going to make time for it. So switch that and just go, man, if this relationship is important, I'm going to make time for it. This goal of mine is important, I'm going to make time for it. I'm not ever going to try and find time for something that's important, because you never will.
In your book, you talk a lot about getting rid of distractions. And especially when you do have, for example, that family time, you talk about like literally putting your phone down and actually being present with your family. And having worked with multiple, big time entrepreneur men, have you, and I'm kind of bringing this from a woman's perspective, right? Because I have a lot of women listeners on the podcast. Let's say that one of them is really desiring more undistracted time with their partner, who is a high level CEO. He owns his own business. And so far, the pattern of their relationship has been that they have been so understanding, that they're so busy and so many people need them all the time, that they've allowed a pattern of constant checking the phone, constant texting or emails at dinner. How could this woman bring up in conversation in a way that would hopefully be received by this, entrepreneur, business owner? How could they bring up in conversation that they would like more undistracted time while being conscientious of the fact that they do have a lot on their plate? Do you have any tips for that?
The first tip is that you must lead by example. And I love this. One of my friends who is a parent told me that your kids' behaviors are caught, not taught. So if you want your spouse, your partner, your kids to put their phone away and be present, and we'll just start with that general approach, then you must never be on your phone while you're talking to somebody. So it starts with like, okay, so let's lead by example here. Great. Then what you need to do is, there's a couple ways of doing it. One is like, can we start with just 5 minutes? The way that I have always thought about this is, when I was a young personal trainer, I knew a lot of women who did 6-9 hours of cardio, regular women, not women like getting ready for a fitness competition, on 3 weeks out. But I mean, I'm talking like, I knew logically, and they maybe knew that they didn't need to do 6 hours. And so I wouldn't say, well, let's just go down to like 0, because, that's like taking crack away from a crack addict, right? You can't do that. But it's like, hey, listen, we're going to cut it down by 30 minutes, and we're going to see that your results aren't going to change. And so what I'm looking for here is that if we start with 5 minutes and he sees like nothing happened in 5 minutes, great. Now we can expand upon that in the other way. Whereas before we were like cutting back, now we're expanding upon it. Or I guess you could say, like, instead of you being with your phone 24 hours a day, you can be without your phone. So I do a lot of rational arguing, and so I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not always going to give a great answer, but the best answer in this. But so everybody sleeps, right? And you were without your phone, because I use this rational argument when I'm getting people to not look at their phone first thing in the morning. Everybody's been asleep for at least 6 hours, right? And so you were away from your phone for 6 hours. So can you just give me another 5 minutes? Can you give me another 10 minutes? Can you give me can we take that 6 hours up to 8 hours, 8 hours to 10 hours, and so on and so forth? Because when I had my anxiety attacks when I was younger, I woke up and I would check the phone, like rolled over right on the phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something negative, there'd be 30 positive messages, one negative message, and my morning would be ruined.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized I was a huge problem, and I decided that I was going to wake up 5 minutes earlier and check my phone 5 minutes later. So I had a 10-minute spread. And I didn't do that every single day and try and add 5 minutes. No, it was a full week of just a 10-minute spread. And then the week after that, I added 5 minutes on each side and had a 20-minute spread. And the next thing you know, there was a point where I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning, because I started at 7:30
Mm-hmm.
when I had my anxiety. I got it back to 5:30 in the morning, and I wasn't checking my phone until 9:30. So I had this 4-hour block. So what you're going to look for is having, first of all, just like a little bit of time and then expanding upon it, I
Mm-hmm.
think is one approach to doing it. Um,
Yeah,
the other thing,
I
go
think
ahead.
that's very practical and very helpful and an easy way for people to come together, because I can't really imagine a partner saying no to 5 minutes of undistracted time. And I feel like if you can get that yes, and you guys are both fully present in those moments, and then let them have their phone again when the 5 minutes is up, then it would be pretty easy maybe next time to ask for 10.
So that's the rational way of doing it. Now,
Okay.
let me tell you what I've seen work for myself, right? Because
Okay.
I myself have been guilty of this,
Mm-hmm.
and it is clearly the emotional appeal. Seeing the hurt in somebody's eyes when you're on your phone, and you're at a restaurant and you're on your
Mm-hmm.
phone, and you're both not Instagramming what you're eating, because my wife and I do this, right?
Right.
But we're not checking messages between and that sort of stuff. But there was a time where I may have been on my phone when we were having coffee or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you look up and they're disappointed. And honestly, like, the whole rational thing, yeah, it could work, but nothing would make me change more than that.
Oh,
And
wow.
one of the people on my team, the head coach in our coaching program, it was his daughter that she's 4 years old, and she looked up and she just said, "Why are you on your phone all the time, Daddy?" Like, they're on the couch, they were supposed to be having quality time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, and he just, like, man, it was like getting stabbed in the heart.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so, yeah, and so, like, honestly, at the end of the day, I don't want people to start. I don't want to say this because it's like, oh my gosh, what if this goes wrong and people get in fights? But at the end of the day, like, the real answer is, like, for man or woman to sit
Mm-hmm.
there and go, listen, I love you, but
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like neglected when you are, and ignored, and I'm hurt by the
Mm-hmm.
fact that you're on your phone while we're supposed to be doing XYZ, while we're supposed to be helping our kids with their homework, or we're supposed to be helping. Like, yeah, you can then say, well, listen, 5 minutes today, 6 minutes next time.
Right,
Like, that's a
right.
rational way of doing it. But man, I don't know if anything's really going to be better than having that real adult conversation about, this is just not fair to me. This
Yeah.
is just not cool.
Absolutely. And I think just honestly expressing your needs, and maybe starting with the need is coming from the fact that I love you and I really desire to have deeper connection with you that's undistracted. Do you think, this could happen? So I love your perspective on that. I always like to ask, like,
I'll say,
yeah,
yeah,
go
I'll say
ahead.
one more thing. I sorry to interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's very important to set the expectations. So it's very important to set the expectation about anything.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were like setting the expectation about the length of the podcast just before we started recording, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's and the again, this kind of goes back to, if you're on your phone while you're doing stuff and talking to your spouse, and then you get upset with them because they're on their phone, like, they're gonna be like, whoa, what's going on here? Like,
Yeah.
this doesn't, because you don't expect the same in reverse. But if
Mm-hmm.
if you say, hey, listen, we're gonna go out, I'm really, really looking forward to this dinner tonight. We're going out, and it's date night, or whatever you call it, or we're just going to go to the movies or whatever. I'm really looking forward to this quality time with you. I'm so excited. I'm going to leave my phone at home. Like, I leave my phone at home now on our date nights as much as possible,
Mm-hmm.
because I just don't want the temptation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so much easier. Now, usually one person needs to have their phone, but
Right.
um, just setting the expectation. I would love us to not use our phones tonight as
Mm-hmm.
much as possible, and then you stick to that commitment. And I think that'll be another way of preemptively avoiding the guilt look, or any
Mm-hmm.
arguments or something that comes up. But it's just like, this night is, I really want it to be about us, and conversation and experience and that sort of stuff. And it is difficult because sometimes you just want to capture the moment, and it's your phone, and
Yep.
then the dang phone is, may have notifications on it or
Hmm.
something, or may pop up, and once you open that one message again, you enter the time machine of the phone,
It's
and
true.
it's a real hand grenade sometimes. So you have it turned off in airplane mode and stuff like that, or you simply get a burner phone that's camera only, maybe. Sometimes, I mean, I have some clients with multiple phones that it's just like, I just have to have another phone for being around family where there's nothing
Hmm.
on it, or for whatever, because, or they have a work phone where there's nothing on it except for their phone number. Because if I don't even know where my phone is. That's like, when you
That's
get to the
awesome.
point where you don't know your phone is, that's when you're winning.
Yeah.
But because, going back to like the entire topic of distractions,
Hmm.
my visualization is to build a fence around yourself, to build a fence around yourself that keeps the wolves out, the time stealers out. And so you have to have these systems in place with your phone, because if you take a look at what the actual phone, so the phone is full of things
Hmm.
built by some of the smartest people in the world. We've sent our smartest minds to California to
Hmm.
build little tools that make us addicted to our phone. That is unfortunate, but that's the reality. And if you think that you and your discipline are going to wake up every single morning without any systems and strategies, and have your discipline beat the addictive power of 10,000 PhDs from MIT who are out there trying to make you addicted to your phone, you're never going to win that battle.
That's so
And
good.
so the question is, how do you build a fence around yourself? How do
Hmm.
you build these systems that prevent you from getting sucked into the time machine of the phone? And for me, like, hey, listen, I'm human. I will get sucked into that time machine too at times. And it's phone is in airplane mode. Phone is
Hmm.
physically turned off. Physically is in another room, and it is in a desk drawer.
Hmm.
And I know that's ridiculous. And like, listen, if I could, like, you know, have a shark protecting the phone from me, I would do that too. I
That's
just don't know how to do
awesome.
that one yet. But I want all those levels, because there's been days where I've gotten to the point where I've turned it on and I'm like, what am I doing? But fortunately there was 4 levels. And so by the time I got to the third level, I was able to like swap my hand, put it back, and go back to work, because dang, those things are addictive.
Hmm.
And we need to figure out, you know, how to build a fence around ourselves, how to help others build a fence around themselves in the phone, how to communicate the expectations of the event that we're going to, and what
Hmm.
the expectations of behavior are going to be, what the definition of success is. It'll be a wonderful date night tonight if we can both stay off our phones. That would
Hmm.
make tonight a magical night. If that's set in advance, then now we know, here's the objective.
Hmm.
But if we're just like, hey, meet you at Mastro's tonight for dinner at 7 o'clock. I know you're coming straight from work. I'll see you there. And there's no expectations. There's no,
Hmm.
hey, leave your phone in the car. There's no like, let's leave work behind, but just, I'll see you after work. Like, he's going to be in work mindset. He's going to come in there.
Hmm.
He's going to be on his phone. He's going to sit down. The phone's going to be buzzing. And there was never any rules of engagement.
Hmm.
So when we have that clearly communicated, we're able to switch from, the work person to the, to the husband or to the boyfriend or
Hmm.
to whatever it is. And so that's key. And that ability to switch, I've talked to mostly male entrepreneurs, I'll be
Hmm.
honest. There's some women that I talk to, but mostly male. And those that work outside of the home and then go home and the young kids greet them at the door, I teach them this little, like, it's hard to shut off for a lot of people. And
Hmm.
so I teach them how to shut off. I'm just like, hey, listen, remember that last summer you went to Six Flags and it was the greatest time, and you were driving home with a smile on your face, and that, maybe it was like a Kid Rock, just picking Kid Rock here. I'm
Yeah.
not saying anything about Kid Rock. Kid Rock song came on. It's just like you were just having the time of your life. Play that song on the drive
Hmm.
home from work. If you have to sit in the driveway and play it 6 times to settle down after a tough day, sit there and listen to that song, because when you go inside that house, you have to be world's number one dad, and I don't care how much work kicked you in the stomach
Hmm.
today. And so it's that mindset. And same with when that man's leaving and going to the date night with his wife. listen to the song, turn the phone off, listen to the song that you got married to or whatever, first
Mm-hmm.
date, whatever, get yourself in the mindset so that when you show up to the engagement, to the event, you are in the right mindset for that. Because in this day and age, we switch roles a lot during the day,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you need little anchors like that.
Yeah, I think that is such an amazing tool to use because it's hard not to carry work into life, especially when, you have your own business and a lot of your work is your life, especially for people who do social media, they're used to documenting everything. It is hard to create those clear boundaries. So I love your advice here to create those boundaries, have those expectations, the upfront
The only reason I
conversations.
can give advice on any of this stuff is because I've had to figure it
Right.
out for myself. I've
Yeah.
had every problem that you could possibly imagine, and I have built a system to overcome it.
And I love that. That's the best kind of advice is when it comes from personal experience because you're like, I could tell you 35 ways to get it wrong. Here's
Yes,
what might work.
exactly.
Okay, so you have some personal non negotiables that you mention in your book. And I wanted to kind of get into the mindset behind some of these. One of them, or a few of them, I'll mention a few. Do not swear, never hit snooze, write for 90 minutes a day, meditate for 10 minutes a day. And you have a few others on there as well. Actually, personally, just curious about the do not swear non negotiable. I'm curious about what the intention was from the get go. Why was that a desire of yours? Where did that come from? And then how long has it been? And have you noticed any noticeable positive impact in your life from not swearing?
There's been some weird side effects of it that I'll
Okay.
mention in a minute. But I'm not sure. Like I remember I said "dang" like 2 minutes ago. I was like, I wonder how many people are going to pick up on the fact that I said "dang" on a podcast. They're like, who is this old guy? Anyways, so I have nothing against swearing. I'm
Yeah.
swearing in my head all the time. But
That's
in
awesome.
in in 2011, so long time ago, I was working out, and some of the thoughts that were going through my head were, hey, Craig, you run this website where you tell people what to do all the time. So we have this business called Early to Rise, and I bought it off a mentor of mine. So it's been around for 22 years now. And it just gives, life advice and business advice and that sort of stuff. So
Mhm.
here I am every day. I tell people what to do. And I don't know why it came up in my mind, but I was just like, but you swear a lot. So maybe you could quit swearing. That was it. Like
Okay.
there was no other thing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to quit swearing because I also knew these two facts that I never swore when I spoke on stage. Like I just don't get these men and women who are dropping F bombs on stage. Like I I do understand that you can get a lot of belly laughs from a well-timed F-bomb.
Hmm.
But if you drop 25 F-bombs in a presentation, it totally ruins it, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Could be wrong, right? So I was like, okay, but I never swore on stage, and I had never, ever, and still never have sworn in front of my mother. And I thought, you know what? I have control over what comes out of my mouth. I, clearly, because I don't swear there and I don't swear there, but I swear all these other times just because there's I don't have any rules. So I decided that day that I would quit swearing. And at the time, I had an email list of 151,000 people in the fitness space because that was where I started out in my business.
Hmm.
And I just told them I'm going to stop swearing. So the first day I swore 6 times. The second day I swore 4 times. The third day I swore 2 times, and then I stopped swearing. And unless I see a giant bug, which there are a lot of in Cancun,
Yeah.
I don't swear. So giant bugs and in my bathroom,
It
I will
might come
swear.
out. Yeah.
So 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 I just quit swearing. Now that just was proof to me that you can kind of put your mindset to do anything. And it was funny, like I was for the longest time I was using the word sugar shack like to
Hmm.
replace swear words. So you
Sugar
know
Shack.
yeah, I don't know why that word, but so what are the lessons here?
Yeah.
One, that you can do a lot of great things.
Hmm.
Two, what really helped me was I used a model. So I have a friend who lives in England, and he's a little bit older than me, and he is just absolutely, like, when you think of a polite, courteous British gentleman,
Hmm.
he's a polite, courteous British gentleman. And so I decided I wanted to be a polite, courteous British gentleman. Like that's one of my things. And so, and that's obviously holding the door for people and opening it and saying hello. And I also like I've taken it to the not to the extreme, but to the point where I don't look at my phone in an elevator. So when somebody comes in, I actually say hi to them because that's what a polite and courteous British
Mm-hmm.
gentleman would do.
Mm-hmm.
And he wouldn't swear. So I had this model. And if you want to improve your fitness or you want to become a great female entrepreneur, you pick Emily as your model, and you go, okay, well, what would Emily do in this situation? How would she react and how would she respond? So you kind of play that game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had that. And then also, for me, punishments work well. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
if I swore, then it was $20. Some people, a lot. Actually, I have a lot of clients who have used websites or just made this declaration that they're going to put money if they do something, they're going to give money to a cause, not a cause, but like a political party they don't like or
Oh, that's funny.
something. So you can do that. Yeah, I remember one time, and I hope I don't offend anybody with this, but one time I woke up one morning and after my work, I checked my email and it says, here's your receipt for sending $500 to Bernie Sanders. And I was like, what happened? Like, did somebody get into my PayPal? But it
Right.
wasn't my PayPal. It was one of my clients who said, if I ever hit the snooze button, I'm going to send $500 to Bernie. And and I'd forgotten that they said that. And they were just showing me that, man, they had slept in and they were like, never again.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah,
So
it's like,
create the consequence as painful as
yeah.
possible so that it
So
nips it in the butt.
Yeah, so some people are carrot people, some people are stick people, right? The carrot, the reward, the stick, the punishment. So you can use that. But really, the power is in public accountability. So whenever I see somebody, like I was talking about, there's like some weird side effects. People freak out when they swear in front of me. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," and I'm
Mm.
like, "I really don't care,"
Right.
because again, I'm not. I didn't. I mean, I think it's good to not swear a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't do it for that particular reason. Like
Mm-hmm.
that, I think that if you say the S word, you're gonna burn in the H word, right?
Right, right,
I'm not.
right.
I don't think that, but um, other people, whenever they're around me and they have read the book or read any of my articles about it, or seen, like I've got YouTube videos on how I quit swearing, and they get really like scared, like I'm going to punish them because they
Oh,
swore in
wow.
front of me. So that's been funny. And then the other thing is that nobody has ever said to me, that hasn't read the book and or anything. Nobody has ever said to me, "Hey, I notice you don't swear." So
Interesting.
it's fascinating. I thought, when I started dating Michelle, my wife,
Mm-hmm.
my soon-to-be wife, or when she wasn't my wife,
Mm-hmm.
I thought she's going to be like, "Wow, you don't swear."
Not
Nothing.
once. That's
No,
awesome.
no, nobody's ever noticed that I don't swear. Fascinating. And so that just goes to show you, and hopefully, you can convince your children of this, that you don't have to swear to be cool and have friends,
Mm.
because nobody has ever said to me, you'd be a lot more fun if you just drop some F bombs. Nobody's ever said it. It's
That's
fascinating.
so true. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's so good. And I think it's very applicable for people who want to quit any habit, right? There's a lot of vices, as you call them in the book, that are just not helpful if you're looking to be the most excellent version of yourself. And I think it's up to each individual to identify what that is for them and then take massive action to actually create change in that area of their life. Before we end here, because I want to respect your time, we're coming up on 45 minutes here. Is there anything else that we didn't cover from the book that you would like to share, or maybe one last piece of advice for those people that are seeking to create change in their life when it comes to their energy management? And yeah, just one last piece of advice that you feel like you could offer them.
I think one thing that is very simple, but every time I kind of make a video on it, people really go like, "Whoa, that's a great idea."
Mm-hmm.
And it's recently a friend of mine, one of my coaching clients said, like, what are your cornerstone habits that have helped you be successful over the years? And most people will think like, oh, Craig's written this book on morning routines and all this stuff and getting up early. And it's like, that's important, but it's actually your bedtime that is so important. Because if you don't nail the
Mm-hmm.
bedtime, then it's harder to not hit snooze. It's harder to get up with energy. It's harder to stick to the plan that you want to keep. And for years and years and years and years and years, I was, when I was younger and going to bed later, it'd be like 11 o'clock. I want to go to bed at 11 o'clock tonight. And especially when I was a personal trainer and, I had to get up super early in the morning, it'd
Mm-hmm.
be like 11 o'clock. And then you look at the clock and it's like 11:30. And then you go like, tomorrow night, I'm going to go to bed at like 9 o'clock. But then
Right.
tomorrow night it's 11:30, and it's like because there's so many temptations at night. And, that was before Netflix and all that stuff. Now today it's insane.
Mm-hmm.
So the tip that I recommend to everybody that a lot of people haven't heard before is what's called a reverse alarm. And a reverse alarm is simply an alarm on your phone that goes off an hour before bed. Everybody knows they have an alarm in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody really, hardly anybody ever thinks having an alarm to remind you to get to bed on time. And so, what we teach people in our books and programs and stuff is if you want to go to bed 10 o'clock at night, have an alarm that goes off on your phone at 9 o'clock at night. At 9 o'clock at night, that alarm means you turn off all your electronics, right? Because research shows that the blue light emitted from your
Mm-hmm.
electronics, keeps you up. And it's always like the last message you get and check at night that just like infuriates you,
Every
whether it's
time.
on Facebook, right? It's always that last message. Just let it sit there overnight when it won't matter. And so, and then you do what I call old school activities. You read a book, you take a bath, you do your
Mm.
meditation, you make your lunch, you make your lunches for your kids, like you read to your kids, you talk to your spouse with no phones. Like you do all these things that, you know, we would have done, I would have done, my parents would have done in the 1990s when I was growing up, when we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have all of these things, so aside from the television, we didn't have all these things that would keep us up at night. And so now you actually can get to bed on time,
Mm.
because if you get to bed on time, you'll generally get as much sleep as you're hoping to, provided, you sleep well enough and you don't, you didn't have an espresso 3 hours before bed. And now you can get up on time.
Mm-hmm.
You can have your best energy for your hardest task. You can have a great workout. You won't, want to go to Starbucks and get a frappuccino because you're tired and cranky. Like it's that, I don't know if you ever seen like the little domino, the tiny little domino
Mm-hmm.
that six dominoes later it knocks down a door,
That's
right?
insane.
And I really, that's actually, I'll go back one more step. The reverse alarm is the second domino because the first domino is planning and preparing the day before
Mm-hmm.
for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people do their to-do list in the morning. If you're doing your to-do list in the morning, you're already too late. Your to-do list needs to be done the day before so that you wake up the next morning, and when you have the greatest discipline, willpower, and intention, you're able to execute on the first thing on the to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're using that greatest discipline, willpower, and intention just to figure out what the heck you're going to do today, you've already lost 10, 20, 30 minutes of the most important time. So what you do today determines tomorrow, and it's so important. And that's the kind of like the planning and preparation
Mm-hmm.
is the genius in almost anything.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. And for everyone listening, where can they grab the Perfect Week formula?
Yeah, so Amazon
Mm-hmm.
for a physical copy, or perfectweekformula.com for a physical copy. But I also give out all my books for free, like no opt-in required, nothing. Just go to craigballantyne.com/free books, and you can download the ebooks and you can download the audiobooks. So if you want a physical copy, obviously you have to pay a little bit of money on Amazon. But if you want just the digital versions, craigballantyne.com/free books. And the reason I do that is because I wrote my books to be read. And so I want to eliminate all friction getting in the way of somebody reading my books. And, I'm a bookworm. Books meant a lot to me as a kid. And I want to help people out.
That's incredible. And for everyone listening, I'll have the links down below. And I can tell you this link in this book will literally change your life, and it'll give you more freedom and time for the things that really matter in your life, like your family, relationships, loved ones, while being successful and being the most excellent version of yourself. So, Craig, thank you so much for being on today's show. Listeners, you know the drill. If you enjoyed today's show, please do us a favor. Tag your friends, share on Instagram stories. Feel free to tag both Craig and myself. Let us know what was impactful for you. And without further ado, we'll see you guys in the next episode of Evolve with Emily. Bye, everyone.